Welcome to the American Theatre Wing seminars on working in the theater, which are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, which is located on 42nd Street, this magic street, right in the heart of New York City. As we are about to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the American Theatre Wing's Tony Awards, I'm reminded that this is the 22nd year that we have been bringing these seminars on working in the theater to you. They're brought to you as a look for you to have behind the scenes of the theater, from the perspective of the performer, the playwright, the director, the scene designer, the set designer, the costume, and the unions and the guilds who work for and with the people who work in the theater. The American Theatre Wing, as you know, is the founder of the theater's highest honor, the Antoinette Perry Tony Award, and it's given for distinguished achievement in the theater. This award is not given for the longest run or the greatest review, but it's given with a great deal of thought to those who have achieved a degree of excellence in the theater. It's a very important award, and we're very proud of it, but it's not all that the American Theatre Wing gives. It gives back to the community through the theater. From the time of the Stage Door Canteen, we have been working in the community through the theater. We have hospital shows. That's entertainment that go out to those who can't come to the theater. They go to nursing homes, hospitals, and AIDS centers. We have a program that is basically developed to develop audiences of the future, and that is working with the Board of Education and through the generosity of the Broadway producers, providing tickets to young people in the 5 boroughs of high schools of New York. We pay a minimum price for the ticket. They themselves pay a very small amount, a large amount to them, but a small amount to most people. And with that, they independently buy a ticket that we provide and come to the theater. And many times we have also had seminars after the theater, a discussion with the people that work in the theater, from the stage manager to the performer, so they too can see what it is to work in the theater. We're very excited about a new program that we have, and that's Theater in Schools, and it's exactly that. Under the Wing's banner, we have brought in the people that make theater come alive. The performer, again, the playwright, the director, and the costume designer. And they sit and discuss with the student the possibility of working in the theater and the various areas that are open to them. And these seminars are an important outgrowth of the Wing School. I think they're unique, and they provide the most wonderful insight into theater. Today's seminar is on the performer, and to moderate the seminar, to co-chair, is Brendan Gill, who is a member of the Board of Directors of the American Theatre Wing, and he is also an esteemed writer and critic for New Yorker Magazine. And George White, who is equally as esteemed and equally as important as a director and founder of the O'Neill Center of the Performing Arts in Waterford, Connecticut, and is a director, and a very fine one at that. And I will turn the seminars over to them, and they in turn will interview and introduce to you the panelists on today's program. I hope that you enjoy it. I think you will learn from it, and I'm delighted that they are here and that you are here too.
First empty chair belongs to Isabel. The second empty chair, this is sort of like 10 Little Indians in reverse. The second empty chair belongs to Betty Buckley, who will be with us, but who is not here, as you see, at the moment. She is the star now of the Sunset Boulevard, and she came here to New York to perform directly from London, where she was in the same great work, and where she received the Laurence Olivier Award for Best Actress in a Musical. She was the original Christabella in Cats. Occupying a chair is Brian Murray, currently in rehearsal for David Hare's new play, Racing Demon, at Lincoln Center. He recently finished a long run in Travels with My Aunt at the Minetta Lane Theater and last year's black comedy at the Roundabout. And immediately to my right is Frances Sternhagen, at the present time performing the role of the aunt in The Heiress. She has performed on and off Broadway in many roles, including on Golden Pond, The Good Doctor, and Driving Miss Daisy.
There is an old hymn, Brendan, called "There'll Be One Empty Chair." We could probably sing that at the end. But it is indeed. Far out on my left is Liz Callaway, who is currently playing in Grisabella. And when Betty Buckley gets here, it'll be fun to talk about that. In Cats on Broadway, she has been in many Broadway musicals, including Baby, and was recently at the Rainbow and Stars with her sister, Anne Hampton Callaway, in Sibling Rivalry.
Revelry, actually.
Revelry?
Although there was a little rivalry.
Oh, okay. Well, there you are. Right. And on her right is Roger Rees, appearing in Indiscretions, and is an associate artist with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and remembered for his really landmark portrayal in Nicholas Nickleby. On my immediate left is Valerie Harper, who returns to the stage in Defying Acts at the Variety Arts Theater, and is known for her television work on her own show, Rhoda, This Is My Day, and Mary Tyler Moore's show.
Rhoda Revelry.
There we are. But really is a veteran Broadway performer, and this production marks her return. So welcome back.
Thank you so much, George.
Well, I'd sort of like to start with Liz, because we were talking earlier before the show, and just how she got started. And I gather you trucked in from West Virginia with your sister.
No, actually from Chicago.
Oh, with your sister,
yeah.
And set up in New York, set up shop. What made you do that? What made you leave Chicago and come here?
Well, Anne and I both, Anne was 21, I was 18 at the time, and we had both gone to college for a very short period of time, and it just seemed right. And it was really kind of out of my sister Eileen. We really just kind of left together. We didn't have very much money. We ended up in this little hotel that ended up being a place where prostitutes lived, which we didn't realize until we were there. And we both started working. Anne started working in piano bars, and I took classes, and I was a singing waitress and did a club act, and then I got my first Broadway show, Merrily We Roll Along, when they were looking for like 19-year-olds who could sing and dance. So I brought my birth certificate to prove that I really was 19. And we had a lot of adventures. We just celebrated our anniversary of moving to New York when we did our show, and it was really amazing to be on stage with my sister. I think it was 13 or 14 years after we had moved together, brought back so many memories. And I can't believe I'm on the stage with this incredible panel. I really feel like, what am I doing here? This is great.
Did you just decide with Anne that, gee, let's go to New York?
Well, she was planning on going to New York, and I was living in California and at the time. And we got together. She went to visit me in California. We got drunk one night and said, let's move in together. You know, it was kind of that. It really wasn't that thought out. But our parents totally supported us. And I kind of came to New York with a 3-year plan that I had like a goal of maybe getting in the chorus of an off-Broadway musical in 3 years, even though it was just kind of a general plan for myself. But I knew I needed to study and work real hard. And I actually did a lot better and quicker than I had thought I would. But I learned a lot. We had a lot of adventures, and it's a tough city, but I was very fortunate.
There are a lot of sisters who have been able to work together on stage and on screen, everywhere, in fact, but much rarer are brothers. I wonder why that is. Have there been many brothers in history?
I'm trying to think.
Not that I can think of.
Hines
John
brothers.
Wilkes and Edwin Booth.
Yes, that's right. The whole
Mills
group.
brothers.
Hines, Gregory, and
The Hines brothers.
Greg,
So
that's
the
right, the
Hines.
Hines, yeah.
Because it can be family work.
Yeah.
And it's important to hear that your parents really did believe in you.
They totally believe in
Are
us.
they in West Virginia? Because,
My mom is a voice teacher in New York now, and my dad still lives in Chicago. Actually, when I was in high school in Chicago, I used to take trips by myself to New York, and I'd stay in the little hotel and see shows, as many shows as I could for the weekend. And just the fact that my parents let me do that, I think, was incredible. But I was very independent and pretty street smart at that age. And so when we actually moved to New York, I don't think they worried about us so much. They knew that I would take care of my big sister.
We'll get your father here yet.
I know. Get his side of the story.
Roger, do you come from London or outside of London? And did you make the same kind of move to move into London, and then, of course, you...
No, I was born in Wales, in a place called Aberystwyth. And we were there till I was 9, and then I came to London, and I lived in South London. I was telling Valerie earlier that, really, I talk like that, you know. But it was at the time, I became an actor at the time when actors spoke, I guess like I speak now, you know, kind of properly, sort of received English, BBC English, and nowadays people just speak with their own accents, and it's a much more attractive and plausible thing, I think, now. But I was so shy as a boy that I retreated to the art room, and I was very sensitive and artistic, and I became an artist, really, and that's all I could do. I was ragged in the schoolyard, you know, and I just sort of retreated, really, because I don't know what it was, I couldn't face things. It was at the time, I was a boy in London at school when the first waves of immigration from the colonies happened, you know. The result of our imperialization of the world, Britain was a very, very, you know, very important. All the globe was this colour at one time. And, but then lots of black families came to England, and there was fear on both sides at that time, very great fear, especially in the schools, you know. It was a terrifying time because of a fear of the unknown, you know, which thankfully we're getting past every day a little better. But so there was a lot of anger and distrust at that time in London, you know, in the communities, certainly the poor communities. So I retreated to the art room, but I was very good at art. I guess I'm artistic, you know. So, and that's the way it came out at that time. It was too sissy to say I wanted to be an actor, really. But I never really was at any other classes. Whenever any other classes, I was always up in London trying to get into theatres, like creep in the back way or try to go to museums and things. I was thrown out.
Like Rada or Lambda, you didn't...
No, not at all. I was thrown out of the Aldwych Theatre. I crept in the back way, climbed up the top and watched Peter Brook direct a rehearsal of U.S., which was a play he did there. And a guy found me and they threw me out, and that's the theatre where I played Nicolae eventually.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so that's kind of good. But so I was at art school, so I didn't really talk until I was about 17. I went to art school, and you don't talk when you're an artist. You just paint. And I did paint very big canvases, and I suppose the best example of what happened eventually was that I went to the Slade School of Art, and I painted very large canvases, so I would be... The Slade School of Art is on Gower Street, right next to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And I would be, on windswept November mornings, be lugging my enormous canvases along the street like this. And I'd see the acting students going in with, like, a pair of sneakers and a book of, I don't know, Love's Labour's Lost or something. And I thought, something's wrong here.
Do you still paint?
No, you know, painting for me was such a full-time occupation, so much an expression of my artistic being, that I really am reserving that until I have a bit more security so I can get a studio and just paint, like, perhaps for the rest of my life or something. You know, I have that little secret thing that I'd like to do one day.
It's certainly a very different form of expression, as you just indicated in your own life.
No, not at all.
I was going to say there's a link, always been a link between actors and painters. Not so much actors and musicians, but somehow there's an affinity with...
The color and the visual and the...
I think.
You think, yeah. I find as an actor, though, I tell you what I do. I do the same as an actor as I do as a painter. As a painter, I used to make a big mess and then clean it up. And I think I do that as an actor, too. I sort of, I go wild in the rehearsals and then define it more and more. So I think I recognize it as perhaps the same process. Lots of course, wonderful actors that I know were at art school. You know, perhaps when the expression of your art couldn't be the way you wanted it to be, you made it something else, and then turned it when you had a bit more power.
Well, there's a theory of all the arts together, that what they all have in common is that they are ways of solving a puzzle.
Yes.
Whatever it is, it's the mentality of puzzle solving that makes the novelist or the actor or the painter or anything like that. And this is apparently true.
But that's very interesting.
Now, what have you?
Yes, oh yes, that's wonderful. I've never heard it said that way. What were you saying?
I was going to say, it's the first time this sort of technique has been explained, that everything is a mess.
And then you...
And then you begin to pull it all together, and you get the lines that,
please God.
connect
Yes.
it.
That was Michelangelo, that the statue was in the block, and he
Yes,
had to
that's
edit,
very good.
He had to edit out,
I like
not
that
that,
bit.
not that, not that, and then, it's wonderful.
Without missing anything vital in that case.
We hope so. Yes.
Valerie, tell us about your, again, it's great to have you back from television. Not that television is selling out, but how did you start in theater?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. In fact, I saw Moira Shearer in the red shoes, and like many girls of my generation, you wanted to be little Vicky. In fact, I told my mother, call me Vicky, because her name was Victoria in that little Vicky. I said, call me that, and I'm going to be Vicky Vale. Then I found out that was the girlfriend of Batman.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was being original.
She's a married sister of Lois Lane, but that's a different
That's right. The alliteration. It's
Yes,
something
that's
with these superheroes girls. Anyway, so I wanted to be a ballerina and really went about working to get into the ballet. And I studied, 10, 12 classes a week. And we moved to New Jersey when I was about, 11. From Ashland, Oregon, where I was taking lessons. Before that was California. My dad was in the lighting business, and we moved every 2 years. One of the moves was to escape the bomb. I was of that generation.
Oh, I see.
Dad said, let's move to Ashland. My mother said, but it's right on the coast. I don't get that this is a good move. But anyway, whatever. The 50s mentality. And I started working. I went to ballet school diligently at Carnegie Hall. Right next door, it was called Ballet Arts Studio, and I lived many wonderful lifetimes there, sweating in the ballet room. And then at the age of about 17, I was a very good student, and my dad and mom wanted me to go to college. I started auditioning for musicals just because I wasn't, my very first job was at Radio City Music Hall, not a Rockette, a ballet girl on the point shoes. I could tap, but not well enough to be a Rockette. So that was that. And it continued, and Dad said I went to Hunter part-time and the new school in between classes, and then I got into Broadway musicals. And Little Abner was my first one, and Take Me Along with Walter Pidgeon, and then we did Wildcat with Lucille Ball, and Subways Are for Sleeping, and Destry. I was in Destry Rise Again with wonderful Dorothy Gray, Dolores Gray, wonderful singer, and Andy Griffith, but I never opened in that because I got hepatitis along the way. And then during this time, I started using my chorus dancer, singer money to pay for acting lessons. And I was trying to get summer stock. And then finally I realized it would have to actually end being in the chorus, much as I liked it, if I were going to become an actress. And that's what I did. And then I worked in lots of things. My first job was Come Blow Your Horn at University of Connecticut, playing Connie, the girl upstairs. Yeah, it was Neil Simon's first Broadway comedy, at least. And then I just continued working as an actress, Second City.
You make it sound all very simple and very easy.
No, it was very hard. It was rough.
But you were self-sufficient from what, 16?
No, my parents were so supportive. I lived at home, and I was in fact, Stubby K used to call me. He was in Little Abner. He played Jubilation. No, he didn't play. Mary and Sam. Yeah. Jubilation Tea Cornpone was the big number. And he used to call me, "Is Holland Tunnel Honey?" Because I was coming through the bus from Jersey City, and my family, mom and dad, and my sister and brother, and just out of high school, coming in to the show. So I commuted for a long time. Then a girlfriend of mine, who is now her name's Iva March, and she married, at that time, this young, struggling actor who had wanted to be, they tried a while in California. His name is Ron Rifkin, who has really come into his own. But they're old, dear friends of mine. And Iva was my roommate. She met Ronnie, they got married, and I moved with other roommates. So that was my early life. Chorus Line was my early life. That show really displays what my life was like. And then I moved into the acting, and it was a whole different ball of wax, as they say.
Fantastic.
And then television. But you see, theater prepared me to play Rhoda.
Sure it did.
And I think theater prepares everyone. And I tell kids when I do seminars, I did Dear Liar with Anthony Zerbe, and we toured all over the country and would have a master class, and I use the term loosely a master, I don't know. But they would ask, oh, how do I get in TV? And I'd say, look, do you want to wear Cher's gowns or do you want to be an actor? Because they're quite different, and not that Cher can't act, she's wonderful. But I'm saying the glitter and stepping out of limos with lights and stuff and lots of makeup and great gowns, it's not what the theater's about. So get into an acting class, start working, work with your friends, get an improv group going, find out if you really like the struggle and the challenge and the joy of doing that hard work that is acting, if you're serious about it. So, yeah.
Well, and I'll get
Francis
into more.
is the one that will go into that, I think, on
Yes.
where you start.
Also,
what about
in terms of
family
the
support
different
in your
techniques.
I
case?
didn't really answer your question.
No, that's
This
fine.
is- okay.
That's a great question. Yes.
Well, no, I had family support. I really admire the people who don't and buck through a lot of things. But I always did, and I started at Arena Stage after teaching for a year because I was scared to come to New York.
You were born in Washington, or you lived there?
Washington, D.C. And I had no connections with theater. My family had no connections with theater. And I went to college. And at the time, everybody I knew who was sort of going someplace was going into the CIA.
Well, that's an acting job.
That's what people were doing in the 50s.
Acting job.
That's an acting job.
That's right. Well, believe it or not, when I went to Europe, I was traveling around, and a friend of mine was with what they called G2 in Salzburg, and actually wanted me to be a spy in the Vienna theater, young, student theater. And I realized that I couldn't ever do that because I would start being interested in people and doing it. I'd tell everything. So,
Blabbermouth, a blabbermouth.
absolutely a blabbermouth.
So instead,
I taught for a year and then started, I found myself kind of performing for the students. And, I taught everything from, square dancing, group singing, dramatics, and modern dance outside of Boston. And when I thought that the Brattle Theater, I didn't know it was going out of business at the time, but I wanted to get into the Brattle Theater because I saw everything they did. So I tried for an audition at the Brattle Theater for a young man who was the producer, who was a Harvard graduate, who wore a tweed coat and with the leather patches and smoked a pipe. And in the audition room where I did 5 very different things, he was about as far away from me as those glasses of water. And, I did Juliet, and I did Marjorie Pinchwife, and Sonia in Uncle Vine, quite a lot of different things. And at the end of it, he said, tapping on his pipe, he said, "Miss Sternhagen, if you want to be an actress, may I advise you to give up teaching? You do everything as if you're leading the Girl Scouts onto the hockey field." And I was so mad that I did. And I went down to Washington and again tried to get it into Arena Stage, and I was rejected. And so I went to Catholic University to see if I could get into their plays because Alan Schneider was working both at Arena Stage and at Catholic U. And Father Hartke at the time just said, I said, "What do I do to get into your plays?" And he said, "We have to take a course." And I said, "Oh, okay. What do you suggest?" "How about acting?" "Oh, okay." Well, I took a course in acting. It was very poorly taught. They didn't really teach acting at the time. But I did. They just had lost a lot of graduate students, and I got into their first 2 plays, which was The Alchemist and Skin of Our Teeth, and was asked to go to Arena Stage, and that's how I started.
Oh, that's great. Great.
But that's pretty hard work.
But you have to. Oh, yeah. But I quite agree with Valerie, and what I tell students is just get into any plays you can anywhere.
Get up there.
Just get up there and do it, and see if you can stand it.
Exactly.
See if that's what you want to do.
What about you? Yes, Brian, you're now challenged to have a very complicated beginning.
It's a lot to follow, right?
And were you supported by your parents?
No.
No. Okay, there had to be.
And I didn't ever do anything else. And I was a child actor. I started as a child actor in South Africa, actually, which is where I was growing up at the time. I was one of those little pink countries that Roger was talking about.
Yes.
And it just so happened that there were an awful lot of actors from England who used to come out to South Africa in the winter and enjoy themselves because it was a lovely climate. So I got to work with extraordinary people like Gwen Franken-Davies and Nan Munro and, you know, people who were directors in Clifford Williams. And I started as a child. I started in Shakespeare. I played Arthur in King John when I was 8.
Now, you didn't have your marvelous register of voice. That all.
I don't think I had any voice at all. But the extraordinary thing was that, although I hadn't ever thought about it. I was very shy too, extremely shy and very frightened. But the moment I set foot on a stage, I felt comfortable. I felt at ease in myself for the first time in my life, and it continued to be that. And I was very lucky at that time because there were a lot of plays with young people, with ingenue, 14, 15-year-olds. And I was in those a lot. And then I went to England. But it wasn't until I got into the RSC, which was after I'd been in England for a couple of years, and that I suddenly realized that there was a damn sight more than just the slightly cocky exhibitionist kid. That I suddenly was working with people like Gielgud and Peggy Ashcroft, and and I was overwhelmed by the very being of Shakespeare. So that was where I really started to understand what the real importance of acting was to me.
I didn't believe that it was permissible for an actor not to feel stage fright. You mean you never felt stage fright?
I felt fright everywhere else, but not on stage.
Really? That's wonderful. That is the exception, man.
Now it's different. Yeah. Now I feel stage fright, but then I didn't.
Now you're truly professional. But your name is Irish.
Yes.
An Irish family?
Well, Scots-Irish. My parents were both British, but my mother was Irish, my father was Scottish.
Yeah. So you moved to England as an actor?
Yes, I was going to go to drama school, actually. I'd been accepted at LAMDA, and I got a job instead. I got a job in a weekly rep company, Barry O'Brien, which was down in on the coast. And I for about £8 a week, and I was learning so much more every week by doing a new play every week for 52 weeks than I think I could have learned at drama school. So I didn't go. I sort of said,
Did you ever go back to school? Did you ever go back?
No. No, I never did. I never went. I was
you kept
never
learning through the roles and
never
the
had a
people
lesson in my life. Yeah. went through the roles, through the people, through the job. And I think there's nothing like it as far as I'm concerned. I think I have missed being a student, just the sort of freedom of being a student and learning and not having to think about earning my living, which I have always had to do. But I've never really regretted not having gone the way I went,
Well, that's fascinating. And of course, that was in the old days, in the last century, was how people learned. You apprenticed yourself to something, got into a company, and worked.
Sure.
And then worked your way up, which is fascinating. Is that your experience too, Roger? You didn't go, apart from being blown off the street.
No.
You just.
Yeah.
I just. What you say about the apprenticeship thing, that's what I feel very much part of that system. I think, as Brian's talking about, I'm reminded that in the 18th century things that when you were too old to play Romeo, you would sell your tights to the younger actors and look round to buy a smock for Friar Lawrence.
The ultimate recycling.
Sure, absolutely. I was, but people ahead of me in the Royal Shakespeare Company were people like Ian Holm and Ian Richardson, who'd got more immediately, and they'd gone all the way through from being spear carriers and. As I'm sure
they were there when I was there.
That's right. That's right. Standing at the back watching people. What? Sorry.
When did you leave Wales?
When I was 9, we came. My father was a policeman, so we came to England.
And did
to
you
London.
ever have a strong Welsh accent?
No, I don't think so, really, particularly. I mean, they all spoke in that funny way in Wales, you know. But I mean, yes, and then I became then I spoke a bit more kind of like London, then I tidied it up as an actor.
Well, when did you...
But there's such a richness
change,
to the Welsh.
I mean, yeah.
Yes, oh yes. Yeah, I feel an affinity and a kind of like sense of that, you know, the Richard Burton-ness of it all, the Dylan Thomas-ness of life. Sure, I associate with that. But I think, yeah, I feel very poetic in that way. I think there is something from, being brought up with those wonderful people. Lots of singing in the pubs and things.
Well, it wasn't a slip of the tongue for you to say I left, I went to England.
Yeah, I went to England, that's right. Well, Wales and England were always at war, really.
I know you can pronounce place names so admirably. Nobody can pronounce who isn't Welsh a Welsh place name.
No, I'm not that clever at that, but I mean, yeah.
Whatever it is.
Oh, that's so difficult, isn't it? That very long name of things.
Long Blvd, you know.
That's right.
But did you audition?
No, I never, like Brian, I never took any instruction as an actor, save when I did get to the Royal Shakespeare Company, when I had to keep on going. So I was never educated, really, you understand?
But how did you get to the Royal Shakespeare?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was painting scenery at Wimbledon Theatre, which is in South London.
Oh, my God.
And Arthur Lane, who ran Wimbledon, with Audrey Lupton.
Yes.
I write to Audrey still. And send her a card at the holidays. And Arthur Lane was one of the last of the great actor-managers. He really spoke like that. He said, "My dear boy." And he came onto the stage, and I was painting the backcloth for the pantomime. Toyland, you know, lots of little teddy bears and things, Jack in the Boxes. And he said, "Do you want to be in a play week after next?" And I was. I was in Hindle Wakes playing the lead. It was because I was the only boy around, you know, I was the only kid. And I got £7 a week painting scenery, and I got £7 a week, acting. He sent me that day to go and get measured for a suit. Up at Charles Fox's in London. I came back and I was rehearsing.
I knew Arthur Lang, yes. When were you at Wimbledon? Well, I mean, I was an actor at Wimbledon.
Oh, yes, with Jasmine Dee and people.
Jasmine Dee and
Arthur Lane used to... Arthur Lane...
Peter Haddon.
That's right, Peter.
Oh, God.
Probably his suit that you were going to
You were
wear.
wearing your suit.
My tights.
Yeah, your tights. My tights. But Arthur Lane did so many plays. He did like sometimes 2 plays in a week. You know.
Was he a producer or a director?
He was an actor manager, so he was in the plays and he produced, fired, hired, did everything. He bought the set and costumes from Camelot when it finished at the Drury Lane Theatre, cut it down and made it into 2 pantomimes, which he sent it out. You know what I mean? But he used to take...
Do his voice some more. I want to hear his voice.
But he would take a script. When he played a part, he had no time to learn it, you see. Because, he was directing the play, he was hiring everyone. So he would take a Samuel French edition and tear it up and leave it, like a bit would be on the mantelpiece, a bit would be over here. So that was his performance. He'd say, "Well, my dear, I think you should leave this morning." And then he'd go over to the coffee table. "Because we are expecting..."
Well, he must have been a very good teacher.
Soap opera. That's what
Soap opera, yeah.
write their lines very often on the floor.
Oh, it's great education for an actor. No time to be frightened, really.
But we don't have that.
Like Brian says, I'm only frightened now, really, you know. It's only when you have time to think about it.
There's no time.
I mean, you know something about it.
I guess that's right.
You know what's at stake.
Yes.
But there's one gift that actors have to have that I can't even imagine possessing, and that is to be able to memorize as much as you do. Now, you can do it by putting it on the mantelpiece, but that's only fit for actor managers. Did you ever have any trouble memorizing when you, as a child, learning?
No. I think that's one of the things. If you've got a head for numbers, like there's no point of being a mathematician if you can't add 1 and 1. I think that's one of the basic things that one has to have as an actor. It should be the least of one's worries, the least of one's problems. And unfortunately, it has been for me. I think a lot of actors are fairly quick studies, or else you're going to be in such pain and anxiety.
52 different plays.
52 different plays, yes, and you still have time to go to the movies.
Well, there's a wonderful. I may have told this. There's a wonderful story about a lady who was doing rotating rep and doing a new play every week or something, or rotating rep. And suddenly went up one day, and the stage manager tossed her the line, and she didn't react, and finally turned off stage in high dudgeon and said, "Not the line, you fool, what's the play?"
Now, Valerie, when did you find out? You began with dancing and everything else, so memorization wasn't the same kind of thing. Learning lines, learning steps.
Yes, but I studied here in New York because there isn't a place to work. It's almost like Mary Tarsai, a lovely actress who worked at the Actors Lab in Los Angeles. She worked, and she'd say, look, the thing about going to class for American actors is a chance to work. Just, you got to think about it as a workout, like going to the ballet bar. And summer stock I did, and this is an interesting thing, to keep body and soul together. I did what you call industrial shows. And as a dancer-singer, that was an opportunity to really act. And I remember Jed Horner was his name, was the director. He said, you know, Val, you have a Judy Holliday quality. Why don't we do, it was a Chrysler show, and we walked around cars, and I played a nurse, and we did, it was almost like a little vaudeville, but the cars were the stars. And you made a lot of money, oh my God, maybe $280, maybe $300 a week, touring around. And what it was introducing the, like for instance, the 1996 Chryslers to the trade, only the dealers from in Detroit, and then you go to major cities, and we got these, but I remember her saying, why don't you do this secretary like Judy Holliday? And I said, oh, okay, I'll try that. And I started doing it. And it was an interesting, it was almost my first, and huge theaters, and lots of microphones, and having to sustain a character, even though it was talking about the cars, was very helpful. So as Americans, we didn't have that same kind of situation where it welcomed you in and you could work out. So class was a big thing. Studied with John Cassavetes and Tony Menino down at Herbert Bergdorf, and Bill Hickey. I was in Bill's class in the early days. And then you just catch it as catch can. And then I understudied...
was there a network that went around that you were able to go from one place to another, as you're describing?
I beg your pardon?
Was there a network of go here?
You read the trade papers, you were invited by choreographers, you heard about auditions, that kind of thing. But I really got about it, show business and backstage were the two papers. Oh, hi, Betty. Betty knows about this. And you just go and read and do and try. And then Second City was a wonderful opportunity for me, because from that, other things.
We're going to get to you right now.
Yes. Yes, there's Betty. Betty's with us
This is
now.
Betty
Welcome.
Buckley, as you well know.
Yes.
And you've already been introduced and praised behind your back and out of your front.
Thank you.
And we've been having a hilarious morning with all kinds of invitations from all kinds of wonderful people. So now you can pitch in.
Okay.
But at the very beginning, as always, we were asking how people had got started, that kind of thing. It happened this morning. It was interesting that 2 or 3 of the people had very strong support from their parents. It was something where they didn't have to fight any conventions in the past. What about you in the very beginning of your career?
Oh, my father was a Victorian fundamentalist from South Dakota, and he was very opposed to my being in the theater. And my mother had been a singer-dancer at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas, and he had been a cadet there and had fallen madly in love with her, and then, of course, married her up and wouldn't let her perform anymore. And so she instantly got pregnant with me, and they discovered I could sing when I was about 5. They had me singing in church. My aunt had been a dance teacher, so I started studying dance when I was 3, and my father, this drove him nuts, and so they used to have these huge fights as she would sneak me out of the house for my dance classes. And I started performing pretty regularly by the time I was 11, and professionally when I was 15. And we lived in Fort Worth, Texas. There was a wonderful summer stock theater called Casa Manana. So I had a great deal of professional experience from the time I was 15 working in the summer stock musicals there and then in college. But it was all a big fight with my father.
When did he reconcile himself?
He really never did. He was a very stubborn man, and he felt that actresses and whores were the same entity, you know, and so we used to have these wild fights about it. But years and years later, after Cats was on Broadway, he refused to come see... I did get him to see 1776 because he thought a musical about the Declaration of Independence was worthwhile. Okay. And I did this TV show called 8 is Enough, and I thought, oh, well, he'll like this. But he didn't even like that because it was very strange. So finally, he refused to come to Cats, and he refused to come to the Tony Awards. And But then I got to do my debut at Carnegie Hall for a big benefit for Lenox Hill Hospital, and so I invited them after all this, and he was getting a little bit older, so I flew them up.
Where was he living at that time?
In Fort Worth,
Still
in Texas,
Fort Worth.
yeah. And so I flew my parents up for this occasion, and I had black velvet dress, a 64-piece symphony. It was really a great occasion to sing at Carnegie Hall. It was like a real dream come true. So he came backstage, and he was his usual gruff self, and I was like, "Well, Dad," and he's like, "World class, Betty Lynn, world class."
Oh, that's great.
I love that. Yeah, and that was a real sweet moment.
But it took a long time.
Yeah, it took a very long time.
And what about your mother all the time? She was on your
She
side
was
of it.
almost the classic stage mother, constantly looking for opportunities for me to perform. And
You were an only child?
no, I had 3 younger brothers who are all in therapy because
When you came to New York, did you study in New York?
Yes, I minored in theater in my university. There was a wonderful professor at Texas Christian University named Dr. Jack Cogdill who had just taken over the theater department, and there was no theater minor program, and he knew that my father would never allow me to major in theater. So he created a theater minor at TCU so that I could participate in the program. He observed me from my just classes around and got the situation, and had gone to school with my mother and kind of sussed out the situation and set this up. So I majored in journalism, minored in theater, and then when I came to New York, I studied with several people, but Stella Adler was one of my most influential teachers, and I studied for 20 years voice with Paul Gavert, who was a great leader singer and classical teacher. And those, I think, were my 2 most important.
What did Stella give you? Many people in the theater talk about Stella Adler.
I really never put my work in front of her because she was very terrifying, and I was,
She was real theater for
She was 17 times life size.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
I watched her take up these other actresses to task and learned from their mistakes really well. But I studied her script analysis classes, and I was so inspired by everything she said. It was just the way of thinking about the poetry of the way of thinking about characters and play analysis really would inspire me, and I would take copious notes, about everything. Every now and then I'd be sitting next to some younger students who would, were taking the classes with some kind of reticence or cynicism and would comment about this older woman who was such a grande dame. One day I turned around and I said, "Do you have any idea who you're talking about? This woman is like one of the greatest legends in theater." It's like, if you can't say something great, just be quiet. She was so spectacular, really. Her mind was just so rich and so inspiring. And my, in those days in theater, I was lucky to work in some long runs on Broadway, for very little money in those days, but enough money to pay for my classes and my therapy, so I would stay in shows for like long periods. Like I was in Pippin for 2 years and 8 months, and I thought I would go I did go pretty crazy. And but that paid for my classes, and I would just absorb everything I could.
Wait on table at any time.
No, I didn't.
She did that with. If you go to her home for dinner, she had waiters wearing white gloves and serving, and I once asked her where they came from, and she said, from the studio. They're all students. And I said, "Well, waiting on table here?" She said, "Oh, yes, they have to learn to do everything." And that was part of it.
But anyway, her classes for me, in being in long runs, just was about how to constantly stimulate your creative inspiration in a venture that was about repeating the same performance over and over again, and how to keep thinking fresh and alive and mining different levels of the material that seemed so familiar, but there was a depth. And so it's inspired a way of viewing things for me.
I think one of the performers talked about a show that has a long run, that the many, many times that you do it, you find new things in it, and it becomes a new vehicle for you if you just let yourself work with it. And you learn something about it each time.
You have to, or else you really have to find a spontaneity that
well, how do you deal with that,
night.
Brian?
Listening. You just
Listening to the audience, listening.
Well, you always listen to the audience with the third ear. You know, that's part of it. But listening to the person that you're acting with. I mean, just making sure that you're not thinking about, what am I going to do after the show? Isn't this boring? I will have what I left for supper, and you know, you've just got to listen as though you're hearing it for the first time. It's a trick of maintenance, and it's very, but it's vital. Otherwise, you will go nuts.
But I have to say that I worked with an actor once who had been told that, and he started mouthing my words. I had to tell him that that's what he was doing. He was so mortified. He said, "Really? But so-and-so told me that I must listen to keep fresh. I guess I'm listening too hard."
He was mirroring, which is a good exercise. But
yes, but...
Now, you've been in the Heiress for months and months. But the Heiress has enough content, so I can imagine thinking and listening in that sense in a play. But if the play that you're in by bad luck is trash but popular, how in the world do you go on listening to that? That would be very hard.
The play is trash. I'm surprised.
I beg your pardon. I had a play on Broadway, and I assure you it was trash. And it died like a dog in the street after 3 days. And it richly deserved to do so. So I speak with authority.
Yeah. I wanted what I'm hearing also, apart from these moments of revelation, Brendan, is that there are teachers that are inspiring, like Stella. And you mentioned almost a legend, which is Father Hartke, apart from the spy from the CIA who was a Harvard graduate. Well, I'm sure that's what he was. But what did he teach? I mean, he is a real legend.
No, he didn't. I got more. Yes, he managed the school, but I got more from Sanford Meisner than I ever would have gotten. I mean, Father Hartke never taught acting at all, but Sandy Meisner was, and still is, quite an extraordinary teacher, I think.
Great teacher, yeah.
And most of what he is teaching is listening. Is using what you get from the other actor, and I loved it when somebody said, "Yes, but what if the other actor is really bad?" He said, "Well, then you have to imagine that they're good."
That's wonderful. Yes, you know, Viola Spolin is much of my work, and we just lost her this year. God bless her. And Paul Sills, and her whole work. Paul Sills, yes, indeed. And that was when I was on Broadway with Story Theater, working with Paul, and also Metamorphosis, the early one, not the Baryshnikov recent. I have a history now. It's not nice thing about getting older. You have this lovely history, and you can hearken back. You'll get there, Liz. Anyway, it was to stay present in the moment and be on the balls of your feet. And much of her work is theater games, and they really work for life. But it's being ready, poised, able, with alacrity to be in the next moment. And I do feel very clearly the listening, and also I feel you owe it to the audience. And I've learned it quite, under fire this last 2 months we've been only running, and we're just getting the performance to where it's presentable in my eyes. I mean, those lovely people that came in August to see us, this whole brand new company, and we were just trying to remember lines. That's the least of what you should be doing. It should be that you get to that point emotionally, and only that line can come out. And they change, and I've had a wonderful experience where I'm in this 500-seat house, and they are in my lap. I've done mostly musicals. They are right there. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're in your lap. And when the play begins, the Defying Acts, actually a hotline, there's a hotline, John Rothman playing beautifully on the other side, and I see, like, these lovely people giving us their attention. Here they are looking, waiting for the balloon to go up, and how can we disappoint, you know? But I get to see them, and their heads are all turned. Some are nodding, some are smiling. It is so touching. I have to start crying because I'm ready to kill myself. But I really use that audience through the scrim. They are so beautiful. They're all unified in what's next, you know. And so if you get with them, and sometimes they're quiet. I call them Canadian audiences. That's my family, because they're polite and they go, and you can't hear them laughing, you know. And sometimes we have people laughing at things that we can't imagine why they're laughing, but you just, or they're silent, and then you just dig deeper into the character. You don't let them let you run through it or walk it. It's just really,
I think audiences are so important.
Oh, it's a privilege
You've got
to be
to
in front of
listen
them.
to them, and they add so much. Do you find that too, Roger? How do you work you're doing such a diverse kind of character here. You,
Oh, in the
you don't quite know who you are in Indiscretions.
Yes,
The audience has to sort of catch up with you.
they do, that's right. Well, that's good, isn't it? I mean, it's good to be ahead of the audience. You're talking about long runs, though. I did think. Awesome. I was thinking about long runs, though. I mean, I've been in some long runs where after about 8 months you go, oh, that's what that means.
Yes.
You know that moment you go, oh, I see.
Or just before you leave the show.
Yeah.
Just at the end, like your last week.
Really, Liz?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's funny, isn't it?
You know, one of the things that's interesting thing about long runs is I've worked with some actors, and their goal is to duplicate their performance each time. And it's really, I mean, you know, everyone has different things they want to accomplish. But that always seems strange to me, because in a long-running show or any show, I mean, I like to do it different each night and try something different. But
How long have you been in Cats?
2.5 years.
I
I did Miss Saigon. Yes, I know. Hi.
I think this is
I did Miss
a
Saigon
wonderful
for
thing to
15
have.
months, which was which was the longest run. I had never done any. I'd been in tons of bombs or short. 15 months I did Miss Saigon, and Cats now 2.5 years, and it's very. And I had never replaced anyone before until Cats, which is a very different experience, too. But Miss Saigon was tricky because it was a very difficult role. It was a role that was not brilliantly written. I'll be nice about it. But it was very, it was very hard. The American Wife, it was an extremely difficult role, and yet every night it's like I try, you know. But there are some actors I find who, you must have all worked with people who try to, have you?
Yes.
Doing the same thing every night is, of course, what.
It's very
forgive me,
hard.
a long time ago, people wanted to do that. If you were in a long run of 5 years, your career was made, wasn't it? You were a successful actor. You could, you know, you're doing the same thing every night. But
But
I mean,
that's
I
your
like to
craft.
feel now that you rehearse to a certain sort of plateau of shall we say, excellence or something, on which you kind of riff every night, on
Right,
which
exactly.
you jazz, you know, you syncopate every night
It really
on
shouldn't
that.
be
which
that
is
way, because that's your craft. That's what makes you a professional.
And that's what makes it
feeling
fun,
organic,
too.
yeah. Although you can go too far the other way and get to a point where you're in the middle of a speech and your mind says, go on, say Kellogg's cornflakes. Go on, you can do it. You can say it. You know. But I think, you know, I think what we're discussing probably is that the little thing that miraculously and amazingly, Stephen Sondheim, all the S's, Stephen Sondheim, Tom Stoppard, and those sort of Spielberg, they won't ever have this moment. There's a moment, there's a little crucible the actor carries, which is that moment of actual performance. When our breath, and you were so excited by being so near the audience, which is another wonderful thing, but that moment of breath, the intake of decision and communication at that moment, that's ours, really.
Yes.
And that's the thing that's very precious. And not to make it brittle or ossified, but to actually keep it organic is a wonderful thing. Yeah, make it
Must be
vibrate.
so satisfying.
Shared by that audience at that moment.
And why I said and those famous men, although they're great theatricians, they'll never actually be a performer in our way when we actually get to be the person who has that moment, and it's a wonderful thing.
What does the audience give you? You're in a very small theatre, aren't you?
In Travels with My Aunt?
Yes.
It's 400. It's actually all right.
It seems small.
Well, that's a very... Travels is a completely different play from anything. I'm now rehearsing Racing Demon, which is extraordinary. But Travels was one had to play 8 or 9 different characters, you know, and in and out of them. And that made it terribly hard to maintain, because the character, him, or in my case, herself, because I played several young women, had to kind of, you know, normally the character is what carries you through, ultimately. I mean, if you are feeling ill, or the play is trash, which sometimes it is, you know, it's the character that you believe in that carries you through. In this case, there were 7, and you were in and out of them like a review.
It's an extraordinary performance.
It was tricky.
Really is
It was
wonderful.
tricky to keep up, but it was the audience, and it was more than almost any other play I've known. The audience who, if they understood what we were trying to do and were able to use the imagination that was required of them by that particular form, it became a real match between us and them. It was an amazing experience.
You must have been exhausted at the end of the
Yes,
performance.
it was pretty draining. Yeah.
We're going to have to take a break now, and what we're going to do is just stand up, stretch, and get right back to our seats again. and continue talking about these people, about quality performances. No word trash in this. Quality. And what it is to work in the theater. Coming right back again.
This is CUNY TV, Channel 75.
We're continuing the American Theater Wing seminars on working in the theater, coming to you from the Graduate Center at the City University of New York. We're talking about what it is to work in the theater. And we have a group of absolutely marvelous performers, all who started in various parts of the theater and in various areas of the world in order to come to New York City. And Brendan Gill and George White will continue bringing out the best of them in this discussion as performers in the theater.
Well, I wanted to pick up a little bit on this replacement issue. We have two Grisabellas here, one who won the Tony Award for her performance, and then Liz, who came along as a replacement, although not for Betty. But I wanted, what goes through your mind? What is your approach? How are you influenced positively or negatively by replacing, coming in? What do you do? Do you find your own way? How do you deal with the director? What happens? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I actually didn't deal with the director because he is long since gone.
Right.
And so I had a dance captain and a stage manager put me into the show. And I've never replaced before, so I saw Betty, of course, do the show. And they encouraged me to do my own thing, to sing it my own way, to bring whatever I felt I wanted to the part, which was wonderful. It was really, I had about 2 weeks rehearsal, and
Isn't that a short time?
Really short.
yeah,
Mike?
it was short. Now the stage time of Grisabella is pretty short. Someone clocked it at about 14 minutes, although I don't know. I think it's
that's a long time
I think it's
sometimes.
16 or something. I do. It doesn't feel like 14 to me.
Couldn't you make it 15?
Yeah. But I remember my first show. It was so strange. I'm so used to everyone collectively being nervous for first performance, and all of us being, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about the theater, that I think the reason I got into theater was almost the social aspects of it. I love being part of a group experience and all being in it together. And there I was, a nervous wreck, and everyone else, it was another show for them. And even though they were very supportive, and I walked down the stairs going, I'm in Cats. It just didn't seem like I didn't have, the 6 weeks at 890 Studios and, the previews and the tech rehearsals and all that. And so it was very, I previewed for a while, I think, in my own performance. And it was tricky. And yet, the show's been running...
When the stage manager blocked it for you, did he block it with the cast, or were you...
No, I had a rehearsal the day I went in, a put-in rehearsal, where it was actually really horrifying. I wore I didn't have to do the makeup at the rehearsal in the afternoon, but I wore the wig and the costume, and that looks really strange. Dressed, you know what I mean? With my little blonde face and my, cat costume on.
And all the rest of the cast, of course, is in their jeans.
They're in there, exactly, going, oh, yeah. And it was terrifying. And I admire people who who replace, because it's... And yet, because the show's been running so long, I really am lucky that I didn't feel that, I have to do it how Betty did it, or I replaced Laurie Beachman, and I didn't really see her do it much. And I just tried to... I find it easier to just bring yourself to it. At least.
And are you enjoying it now?
I am. It's I've been doing it 2.5 years, and which is, to me, such a long period of time. But I love it, and as Betty will say, it's a great role.
It's a perfect job.
It is a perfect job.
You're in and out all evening, and then you go on and you deliver the killer number, and everybody acts like, oh, thank you.
Oh, I know.
I know. You're sitting backstage reading.
I feel guilty, though. It's like the other dancers, they're killing themselves, and then you come out and you know. But it's
Is there a change in the audiences in the 2.5 years that you've been in? Anything that you
It's
can
actually
see?
it's almost trendy to come to Cats now. We have incredible, the last year and a half, the audiences have been
Repeat
amazing.
audiences, they've been before
and the
then.
people are bringing their children who saw it originally. We have a very large international audience. A lot of Japanese tourists come, and but it's been incredible. I think we've been satirized on David Letterman so many times that people are really. It does help. It really does help when people are coming to the show. But it is a wonderful part, and in talking about doing the long run and listening, so much of Grisabella is alone and reacting to people who don't want. You know what I mean? So it's very different. But I love the role.
You were speaking with Fran before about...
And have you seen Betty in
No.
Sunset?
Not yet. I'm going to.
So am I.
Good.
Very soon.
I'll give you all my numbers and you can call for house seats. I'll set up your tickets right away.
What kind of a rehearsal period did you have?
What did I rehearse? Oh, in New York, about 2 weeks. But in London, when they first put me in, I had 8 weeks. So
You did have 8 weeks.
yeah, in England, because they broke the show down there and put in all the changes that they'd made in LA. They closed the show for a month, redid the set, redid the lighting. Just made all the changes and put in all the... See, they refined the show in England. From the British production, they refined it in Los Angeles. And then he wanted to give the London... Because he got such mixed reviews in England, he wanted the London audience to see what he'd finally figured out about the show. So he broke it down. So for me, it was... In England, wasn't... like replacing as much as it was getting to do a fresh start on the show.
It was really starting over.
Yeah. And so I had the 8 weeks with Trevor.
And who was the director? Who worked with you?
Trevor.
Trevor worked with you.
And then when I came to New York, I had very brief rehearsals because Equity doesn't allow the cast that's working very much rehearsal time. So
You want to explain that? How much time do they have?
How much is that? What is the rule?
I don't know the exact rule, but there were only so many hours a week that the 2 leading men that I work with in Sunset were allowed to work. So I got a minimum of time with them, and then Trevor flew in and gave us about 2 days, one really full, hard-on day which was absolutely necessary because in Sunset's is just a fabulous show and really classic, powerful material. It's had such mixed messages about it as a piece from the critics and stuff, which is odd. But each woman that plays it, I saw Patti LuPone do it. I saw 2 understudies. I saw Elaine Page, who took over for me in England, and I saw Glenn last November, Glenn Close. And so I've seen all these various Normas, and I haven't seen my own. I saw kind of glimpses of some press footage, and it was horrifying. It was like, oh my God. And it's funny how, like, you think do you guys have this problem? You think you're doing something and you have a sense that it has a certain physical aspect to it, and then you see one of these video press reels and you're, oh my God, I had no idea I look like that. I'm doing that, And these moments that I think are like really slow or like really realized in time just go by like a slur, and I'm going, my sense of inside myself, what my sense of time is and how it manifests itself externally is completely strange. And
You can't be the show and see the show.
do you have that experience?
That's a real truism.
That just frightens
That's why we
me.
need directors.
And there's nothing I can do about it, except just go back and go, oh well, I can just do the best I can,
Absolutely.
At the very beginning, did the stairs bother you? Was that difficult?
The stairs are just the worst
Must have
thing
been
about the
frightening.
show. And it's like your knees just really take their toll. But anyway, I had these 2 days of rehearsal with Trevor, which. But what I started to say, I'm sorry, I'm digressing, is that each woman who's done it, it's so fascinating because it's such a powerful role, and you really get the accumulative life experience of each actress, and each interpretation is so vastly unique and vastly different. And why there's all this sense of competition and comparison is very, very strange, because one can only be what one is and bring your own information to it, And
I think it's press, don't you?
oh, it's hoopla, but it's like.
It's something to write about.
Yeah, I think Boris Yeltsin is right.
Yes, that was wonderful, yes.
Now, Val, you were talking about replacement of you and Fran before we got
Fran's got
there.
the most wonderful driving Miss Daisy. She was telling me.
Tell us that.
Oh, well, I just went in 8 days to replace Dana, who really did a wonderful blueprint for the part.
And I just asked the stage manager if I could come in before Christmas and before my 8 days started to get the blocking, because I don't learn things very easily without moving, without knowing where I'm going. And Daisy had such fast scene changes. I mean, it was just one scene after another. So I got the blocking and was able to learn the lines with some cueing. And I only made one mistake on the opening night.
We had a situation with Defying Acts, unlike what you were talking about. 4 of us, actually 5, because the Cinderella finally, or what is it, the bridesmaid, Paul O'Brien, finally got to do the Mamet, the David Mamet role, and he'd been understudying it, so he was pretty solid. But the 4 of us, Kelly Bishop, a wonderful actress from
Chorus Line.
Sure, Chorus Line, and of course Pterodactyls and many things, and John Rothman and Brian Reddy. The 4 of us came in to rehearse, and I thought, 4 weeks, okay, I'll learn it in Los Angeles. When I got the role, and I'll be prepared, at least with the text, really have it in terms of ideas of what I was going to do. 2 weeks with the stage manager, and then Michael Blakemore came in, this wonderful, he's a fabulous director, just incredible, for 2 weeks. But I didn't really realize at the time, these were 3 plays, and what you did what you rehearsed in one play didn't serve you in the other. Like when you do a 3-acter, what you do in the 3rd act serves the 1st, the character development, you can go back and you build your evening. This was really horrifying because we would rehearse one show on Tuesday and then we wouldn't touch it until Saturday because the other 2 plays, those actors, and limited time too. Exactly, Betty. We could only get on the stage at a certain time because the stage crew had to open the theater, and then they had to stay till 11 at night. We never really had a full tech. It was incredible. And then there was New Yorkers. I felt, coming back to New York, there they were sitting out there. But we just had to say, these are previews, and we're going to get it. It was amazing.
And you felt that the audience itself, did they have any sense of what your feeling was or not?
I hope not. But you try your best, but I knew it wasn't where it should be. You can't, I said to them, my experience was, I have never been this unprepared in my life, including all the years of Mary Tyler Moore and Rhoda. By the way, those shows are a theater experience. I think maybe that's why I took to this easily. It's not like a film actress coming back. You have 300 people there. It's like summer stock. You rehearse it all week. I don't know, Betty, yours was single camera,
Ours
wasn't
was film, yeah.
Okay, that's another story. But these 300 people are there, and you want them to laugh for real. So you have cameras between you and them, but they're there. So it is wonderful, and there's 4 cameras, and you don't have to stop, and you do a scene. So it's sort of a stepchild of theater, but closer than anything else.
But isn't that close to what's happening in England? It has happened in England, working with the Royal Shakespeare and the repertory companies. Don't the English performers more frequently work with each other doing different plays on the same season, moving from one character to another?
I don't think any more than in any other place in the world, but certainly when I first
have more repertory in England.
Yeah, when you work,
You're talking about either rotating rep or regular rep, where you just do synchronistic rep, where you do one after the other. Yes, I think there's just a little bit more quantity, really.
Right.
You just...
I've never done that. Is that really difficult? It'd have to be so difficult to carry all those characters in your...
Rotating rep is the best thing in the world. It's the best thing in the world, because every time you come to it, it's fresh.
Yeah.
You know, you've been away from it, you've been doing Romeo and Cassio for a couple of... and then you come back and you start to play Edgar, and you realize it all over again.
You can carry all those people in your head at the same time. That's amazing.
But you drop the other 2.
And the night that you play it, bring it back.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. What fun.
I'd love to do that.
But we've tried repertory so often in America, unsuccessfully.
ABA was as close as we got.
Hamilton.
But you could. I was in Pitlochry once, and their advertisement said, "Stay 7 days, see 7 plays." You know what I mean? But when I went to the Royal Shakespeare Company, the matinee would always be different than the evening. You know.
Yes.
Wow.
But then, when I first joined, I played a Huntsman, in every Shakespeare play. You know what I mean? I was always a huntsman. That was it. Yeah. No, you know, like Antony and Cleopatra, a huntsman. You know, Taming of the Shrew, a huntsman. But then, so it's not so much fun then, because you're just a huntsman all the time. You've got the same boots on. Actually, the
same tights.
Yeah, the same tights. The boots I was given for my first A huntsman. Of course, were second-hand because I was a huntsman, you know. But they were Charles Lawton's King Lear boots.
Oh, great!
They were the boots I was given when I first went to Stratford. However, what happens when you get the repertoire system later on is that eventually, after some, you know, 15, 17 years in the Royal Shakespeare Company, I was playing in the repertoire system Barone in Love's Labour's Lost in the afternoon and Hamlet in the evening.
Great.
Now that's when it works great.
God.
Yeah, I used to like it the other way around, actually. I used to like Hamlet first, get rid of that, and then
Have some fun.
get lots of laughs.
But it's really pumping artistic iron. It's really.
But it's fantastic. Yeah. But you know, when it works great, it works like that, and then it's fantastic. What it works, actually, even better than that, is there was a period at the Royal Shakespeare Company when people were playing large and small parts.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. When someone is playing Coriolanus in the afternoon, and then in the evening, in your play, they're playing a huntsman. That's good.
Yeah.
That's real corporate theatre. That's really exciting, because there's a joy in that, a sharing, which is, I find, the thing that really I associate with the best sort of theatre experience in my
We had trouble here because I remember during APA, the stagehands union had to give so many concessions in order to change the set.
That's right.
And over here, we really do have a problem with that.
Eventually what happened was that they came down to using one sort of set at Stratford. You know, a black box, a white box, or an approximation of some sort of octagonal sort of thing with balconies, which you could use for many plays because of that very problem. Yeah.
I'd love to do musicals in Rep. Wouldn't that be fun?
Wouldn't that be fun? There you are.
Yeah. That'd be great. All the American classic musicals back to back.
Well, they do, in a sense, the Metropolitan Opera does a little bit if you're a chorus member, not if you're a star. Does that in a sense.
Right.
That's the only place it's left.
God, that'd be a great idea.
Nicholas Nickleby, when you were last in New York, then after Nicholas Nickleby, here in New York.
Nicholas Nickleby was, of course, a wonderful thing in my life. It was a wonderful... and I thank you very much. I got the Tony Award for that, and it was a very celebrated moment in my life. But I do think it's a celebrated. Nicholas Nickleby was about acting, and so therefore it was for lots of actors. It was for everyone, for all of us, really, a thing like that. But I went back for a week to England. It was about flavour of the month. I was the toast of the town. But I came back a week later to a party, and somebody actually did that thing. They went, oh no, because I'd gone, I'd finished. But I don't know. No, that's right. Oh yeah, but it's I don't know. What I did, people say that I should have stayed, but I actually went back and did a musical where I played a rabbit in England at the Young Vic, a thing called Masquerade, and Sarah Brightman played a daffodil. It was a wonderful story about a hare that takes the love of the sun to the moon. It was and it was very unsuccessful. Rather good music, actually, but it was. I just felt that I should do what I wanted to do then, and perhaps I should have stayed here and done Uncle Vanya or something. But no, I just followed my nose.
Such
I
a
guess.
pity. You've never achieved anything because of that.
I know.
Don't we all feel that?
And so then that brought you up to Indiscretions here.
Well, then I did and I worked with Tom Stoppard a lot and did a lot of Stoppard plays. The Real Thing I did for the first time in England for a year, and then Hapgood. And then Hapgood took me to America, where I was in Los Angeles playing it with Judy Davis, and then the Cheers people came. And using many negatives, they said to me, I suppose it wouldn't be possible that you couldn't be possibly interested in
So we're backing out of the room. They were
but I went to see them, and it was the hottest day of the year, and I was wearing a suit. And they said, anybody who turns up in a suit, on the hottest day of the year should play the part. They thought. But like you, then I had a wonderful experience with Cheers, with Francis and Valerie, in that you play in front of an audience, a live audience, with the cameras on you, and that's very exciting.
Really good writing.
Great writing, yeah.
That makes such a difference.
The writing is everything, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt you, but we have some questions here from the audience, and could we do that now?
Paula Cave. I'm a student in Mercer County in an acting class, And I just wanted to say what an honor it is to be here today with such an esteemed panel. Also, I'd like to find out, how do you get involved with acting? I mean, without having any prior knowledge or knowing anyone, how do you go about doing that?
Well,
I think, can I say something? What I always say to people, I don't know if this is helpful, this is a completely spiritual notion, but I think if you really need to be an actor, you must express your need. If your want is great, you must express it. But if you discover it isn't great enough, then you have to step aside and let someone else whose need is the better, more than yours, do it. I think if you really feel you have to do it, then somehow you have to do it.
How do you express that need?
Well, yes, Francis said earlier, you just have to go everywhere you can to act. You have to act on street corners, in church halls. You can, we all started off as amateurs. None of us started off as professionals. No one does. You start off performing for your parents. You do what you can. Except for Brian, who was a star when he was poor.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Norman, and the need to act just kept coming and coming, and I couldn't resist it any longer, so I am now a working actress. And what I wanted to know, do you still have to audition, any of you?
Yes. I am today.
And if you do you have any special little things that you'd like to share with us? That you prepare, or that you find works for you, or that...
You have to go in knowing completely... my name's Betty. You have to know completely from your heart that you have something to offer. I've been teaching acting for years and years, on and off when I'm in the city. And I try to tell my students, so many people who want to act come in and they're desperate for you to tell them that they're good. They basically, let me know give me your approval, in other words, whether it's a job that they're going for or a teacher that they're going to. And that's not it. You have to find a place in yourself where you know that you have something unique to offer, and that's absolutely inviolable. It's like no one can violate that, even if they reject you, even if they say no. So you walk in and you from a subliminal level, what you're communicating is, I have something very rich and unique to offer, and I'm not here to ask for you to approve me. I'm here to share with you what I have to give. And then it's possible that they'll give you the job.
And if they don't, if they reject you, then I think you have to accept that you just weren't their idea of the part, and not get all upset and
don't take it personally.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah. Well, I direct quite a lot, and when people audition for me, a word that I don't really like, because it's really a meeting. And I need to know that that actor or actress is going to mean something to me personally, as well as to the part, so that there's a quality of confidence and warmth that I think is important to bring with you as an auditionee, and know that the director needs to find the right person as well as you needing to find the job.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to add to that? Because I think it's one of the important questions that come up all the time in these seminars.
The thing also is, if you can be defeated by no, you really probably shouldn't be in this business.
That's true.
And we get a lot of them.
Yeah, and I thought when I first went to Hollywood, I started to go out for sort of films and things, and I would go into the room and I'd have the sides, which is a little bit of script that on a piece of paper, and I'd say, well, how do you want this? Would you like it like tall, short, funny, serious? And they would be dumbfounded by the notion that I was complex and I could offer them different versions of a character. And I've learned that well, this is only a generalization, is that the best thing to do is to actually look at those, if you can get them the day before, learn the lines, go in and give a performance that you've decided on. I'm going to play this part Scottish. I'm going to do it Scottish. You go in and you do it like that, and then you say, thank you very much for seeing me, and you leave, because at least that day, even if you're rejected, you feel you've acted.
Exactly.
You acted, you exercised your craft, It's a very important thing, I
Another
think.
trick for auditioning, I think, not a trick, just a real good technique, is to go in and, as Roger just mentioned, that you do the successful performance. You don't think of it, try not to think of the job, or, oh God, I need this job. It's more like go in and fulfill, and then you walk out of there, maybe you were too brunette, or too heavy, or too small, or too old, or whatever, or too English, whatever. But never. They'll always be in England. The other thing is, when I was a chorus dancer, a dear friend of mine, used to be my husband, current excellent friend, years and years ago, Richard Shaw, I'd say, oh my God, there's going to be 300, 400 girls for a chorus of 8. And he'd say, Valerie, no, there's only 2, you and the person that gets it. Do you know what I mean? Or 1 of 8. So if you can walk in, you cut your competition way down, because it's between you and one other person for the role. And it's almost like a little way to go in, and then you're able to do what you do. I also make, like today, I'm going to a reading right from here, and I've made specific decisions and things, and I write them, actions that I'm, because I didn't have time, really, enough time to read the whole piece. But that's what you do.
One more question.
I'm Kat Caruso. I'm a theater major at Mercer County College, and this is to Roger Rees. What problems do you encounter playing a very stylized piece like Indiscretions or Hapgood, and how do you find grounded reality in farce?
This is another song.
Why is this to me? All right, very quickly. This is a European play, this cocktail play, and I think there's a sort of European play that is very, very like circus, at the same time as being very, very true. I was in another play called The Suicide by Nicolae Erdmann, which is a wonderful play where, at one point, the poor members of this Russian family throw their plates around the room. And they only have 3 plates and 2 cups and a vase, but they throw them around the room, and it's like a circus, when people throw plates around. But think about it, these are the only things these people have, their only possessions, and they're almost daring each other to break them. And I think that's so these, although these things are stylized, they are about real, true, grievous moments in people's lives. And I think you have to find any pushing of reality in theatre is only substantiated by the fact that there's a truth underneath it. And so I think that's why you get different forms of theatre.
Thank you so much. Really, I wish we could go on and on with this. And I once more have to be rude and interrupt you and say that this is the American Theatre Wing Seminar on Working in the Theatre, and it's coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. And this is the most extraordinary panel of gifted and generous people that we've ever had on our program. And I thank you all for being here and sharing your craft with us. Thank you so much.